we will come back to the time of the Cold War, kidnapped the legitimate President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. We are completely against this action. We are condemning this military aggression towards Venezuela, the immediate release of the legitimate President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. I really was surprised. I remember I was in my office here last 3rd of January at midday, and I received a phone call from Capital, put me in the news that the U.S. made a military aggression towards Venezuela. And I was totally surprised. Of course, in the last month, I know that the U.S. has gathered some military equipment and troops in the Caribbean to put pressure on Venezuela. But I never imagined that we will come back to the time of the Cold War and unilaterally a big country will have this illegal military invasion over a sovereignty country like the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And they did it, you know. I was following then the news. I see all the military attacks, all the damage caused in Caracas and other states in Venezuela, other provinces in Venezuela, and also that a terrorist group kidnapped the legitimate President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Of course, it is an illegal action. I think it's against all the principles contained in the United Nations chapter and international law. It's completely unilateral. No one country could support this kind of action in the 21st century because nobody has the right to intervene in the internal affairs of other countries, but even to make this a military invasion or aggression against a sovereign country. We are completely against this action. We are condemning this military aggression towards Venezuela. And of course, we understand the right of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to defend itself of this military aggression. And of course, we also demand the immediate release of the legitimate President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores, because only the people of Venezuela has the right to decide who will be in the government, who will lead in the country, and no other country, not a big power, has the right to decide for them. It is my statements about this topic. It's difficult for me to answer this question because I don't have much information about what is happening between the two countries, if they are negotiating or not, if they are in talks, the authority of Venezuela with the U.S. authority. I don't know. I cannot say my opinion. You cannot believe 100% also of what Trump is announcing, sometimes using the media in order to treat the people and so on. So I request you, please, to have this question to the Bolivarian authorities in India or in capital, because I don't have more information, sorry. We were dealing with Trump for many years. I remember the first administration, Trump administration. He also had a very tough agenda against Cuba, and during those 4 years, his administration adopted more than 243 different measures in order to strangle the Cuban economy. They trying to overcome all the decisions that were made by the previous president, Obama. I remember during this period we started a normalization process of the bilateral relation between Cuba and U.S. And we demonstrated, we showed that both countries, if we have the political will, we can start solving our standing problems, because we are neighbors. We are facing the same challenge in the region. I say in terms of, for example, the climate change, how to preserve the combating against the trafficking drugs or trafficking in person in the region. So we were able to establish more than 20 bilateral commissions in order to work together in different topics. So about strong administration, because of the power in this administration of the Cuban Americans living in Florida, they started this strong policy towards Cuba during the first term. In the second term, well, one of the first decisions of the Trump administration was to reinclude Cuba in the list of countries that supposedly sponsored terrorism. I mean, it's totally unfair. It's politically motivated because Cuba never has committed any kind of actions against any other country. You know, we are not committed terrorist actions against any people, against any nation and any government. So it's totally unfair. And Cuba has been victim of this terrorist action from the U.S. territory, mainly from Florida, from these extreme right groups supported by the U.S. governments. So it is completely politically motivated. And why? Because once Cuba is in the list, they could approve new laws in order to, for example, to cut any possibility of Cuba to have a normal relationship with the U.S. companies, but also for us it's very difficult to have any financial transaction abroad because of all this, the dominance of the U.S. in the international financial institutions. So it's difficult for Cuba to have normal relations with the world in general. After that, every week they are announcing new measures against Cuba because the idea is to put Cuba in troubles, economically speaking, to cut any financial income of the Cuban economy. They are, for example, persecuting all the oil supply to Cuba, not only from Venezuela, from Russia, from any other country. Also, there is a ban for Americans to travel to Cuba. They cannot travel. I remember during the Obama's administration, more than 1 million Americans traveled to Cuba in a year to discover this beautiful island just 90 miles from the U.S. And the majority of them, more than 90 to 99% of those Americans that traveled to Cuba, immediately they returned to U.S. and support to put an end of the blockade policy towards Cuba. They said, well, it's a beautiful country, 90 miles for us. They are not against the U.S. population. They don't deserve to have this strong policy of the blockade. They have a very rich cultural life. So the people are happy in Cuba. They have the social system, education, healthcare. Why? Why this policy against this small island, just 90 miles from the U.S.? And why they are cutting all the possibility for Americans to travel to Cuba? They also suspend direct flights from different U.S. states to Cuba. So it's every day something new. And now they are trying to cut also all the different programs that Cuba has to provide medical services to more than 60 countries, which means one of the important income to the Cuban economy as well. So it is a package, you know. And what is the philosophy behind this policy? To create internal problem and to have the people dissatisfaction in the Cuban population and to mobilize the Cuban population against the Cuban government, you know. And with this action, they could justify a military aggression or invasion against our country. It's not the first time in the Cuban history. We have a long-standing relationship with the U.S. and we have suffered more than 6 military invasions in our history. So it's nothing new. But it's true that these different people that are in the power now in the U.S. are very dangerous, not only for Cuba, for different Latin American countries, for all the West Hemisphere, and also to the world. This State Secretary, Marco Rubio, is very powerful in this government. He said that he's Cuban. He's not Cuban. He was born in the U.S. His father went to U.S. before the Cuban Revolution, looking for economic opportunities in this country. But the anti-Cuban policy in Miami in all these 65 years has been a way of life. To collect money from the U.S. government, to make them rich. They all have many millions in their pockets, but they're using the anti-Cuban policy in order to have more power, and the Cuban groups are the more represented of the foreign community in U.S. in the U.S. Congress. They have more than 12 Cuban Americans in the U.S. Congress. They are using this power in order to, to move the U.S. policy, the international policy, against Cuba. And they are threatening Cuba. I think, of course, we are determined to defend our country. First, looking forward to enhance the relationship of Cuba with all the world in order to continue to strengthen the Cuban economy, looking for more possibility to provide more quality of life to our people, to connect Cuba with the world, to call for investments to the Cuban economy as well. So we are doing everything in order to, to face this critical situation in the financial and economic point of view. But at the same time, we are determined to defend our country, to defend our land, our homeland. It took more than 100 years, to reach our own independence, January 1st, 1959, leading by Fidel Castro Ruz. And the spirit of Fidel, that a small power has the right to live in front of this big power as U.S., has still in the Cuban population. We have never surrounded ourselves in front of the U.S. The red line, we always have been very open to negotiate, to talk with the U.S. authority, to find common understanding and to cooperate. But the red line is the independence, the sovereignty, the self-determination, and the right of the Cuban people to decide its own political, economic, and social system. It is only to the Cuban population the right to decide this. It's not my understanding, it's what they have said. They have said that, first, that the U.S. has the right of the domination of the whole West Hemisphere. They said that they would like, or they will do everything in order that each government in the Latin American, the Caribbean country should be in line with the U.S. interest. They said that all the financial resources, or even more, the natural resources, the strategic resources of the America and Latin American and the Caribbean country should be on disposition to U.S. They said openly. This moral doctrine that they're trying to impose by force today in the Latin America and the Caribbean goes in this direction. That they have the right to dominate the hegemonic power against all the Latin America. It's a threat not only for Cuba. For example, they say the same to Mexico. They will interfere in the Mexican policy. Also, they said to Colombia, to the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, you can be the next. So you cannot treat an independent country like this. You don't have the right. And the international community as a whole reject this kind of unilateral policy. Recently, the Security Council met in New York and was very clear. I was following all the statements. The huge majority of the states, of the representatives in the Security Council was against these unilateral actions. We cannot come back to the Cold War. It seems like we are in the middle of the 19th century. Also, the people are against these military actions. You cannot deal with the problems that we are facing today in the world, imposing your decisions. And I think that altogether should send a very strong and clear message that we cannot accept this policy against the sovereign country. Also yesterday, the non-alignment movement also delivered a very clear declaration in New York, expressing the consensus of more than 120 countries against these unilateral military operations against Venezuela, and also demanding the release to put in freedom the legitimate President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Yes, we have been very clear because the Bolivarian government request for the presence to reinforce the safeguard team of the President Nicolas Maduro following this attempt of aggression to Venezuela, and we send this group of people to support this safeguard team, and they were there, of course, fulfilling their duties that night, and they were, of course, refusing this terrorist group that went to Venezuela with the mission to kidnap the President Nicolas Maduro. They are foreign combat. They were very brave for more than 30 minutes. They were, facing this aggression with a courage that identified the Cuban people. For us, all of them are heroes, and they represent this spirit of internationalist that has been has been part of the Cuban policy also, to support all the people that are fighting for the sovereignty, the independence in many other countries. This is why, and we declared 2 days in Cuba to pay tribute to those people that were fighting against these terrorist groups, and all the Cuban population are mobilized now in our country, in any single school, university, or factories, hospital, in all the places. The people are paying tribute to, is this, I think, especially the global south countries, for more than 60 years or more, we have funded important organizations to defend our rights, for self-determination, to call for a new economic and international order as well. And for example, we have the non-alignment movement is an expression of this. Also the G77 plus China is another example. We have also different international organizations, new organization that has been built in the last years, for example, BRICS as well. It's not a political organization, but it's an organization to defend our rights, to have bilateral relations, multilateral relations, following the United Nations chapter, and also not to refuse any imposition for foreign countries, big countries, in order to define what currency we should use. We can be more open in order to develop our financial and economic relations between our countries. And there are many others, regional and international organizations as well. I think that we have all these scenarios, all these organizations, in order to, to take position, to defend ourselves from these big powers. I think that, as I mentioned a few days ago, any of us unilaterally, single, could force U.S. to change its way to, to establish this kind of relation with the global South. Not a single one, but all united could defend our ideas, and this is what we are calling on. We are calling the international community, we are calling the people, the governments, in order to express very clear their opinion that we cannot accept this kind of the relationship from U.S. imposing their decision to the world, and we should be strong enough together in order to defend ourselves. Oh no, I can express my opinion regarding the Cuban position, no, because I am representing here Cuba. I was following also what was the statement delivered by the Indian government. I think they are requesting to solve the problem through the diplomacy, the dialogue is a way, not using the force, of course. And also, of course, we all would like that this problem could be solved through a peace solution and not using the military aggression. But I think India is playing today an important role, internationally speaking. It's an international player. India is participating in the main political body decisions in the world. Also, now India is in the temporary presidency of BRICS. He assumed this responsibility from Brazil. So this year will be very important in order to continue enhancing the cooperation, the collaboration between the BRICS countries, but also with the rest of the Global South. And we are, next January 12th, we are celebrating the 66 years of bilateral diplomatic relations between Cuba and India. So it's a long-standing relations. Here in this photo, you can see one of these backgrounds of this relation, this meeting in 1960 in New York between Fidel and Nehru. And this has been the same during all this year. The relation based in mutual respect, in solidarity, in cooperation, in the international organizations, also multilateral organizations. Cuba and India are cooperating very close. We have the same position, we can say, defending the right of the Global South for the development to the self-determination. So I think that the role of India will be growing in the future, according to also to the economic results that India has raised or achieved in the last year. And we all will, of course, will continue India to be in the leadership of the Global South, promoting a new economic order based on the international law and the respect of the United Nations Charter. It is a decision that should be taken by Indian government. I cannot even suggest what to do or not, but I think that everybody could contribute, sending a message to the U.S. government that a military aggression, a unilateral actions against sovereign country never will be, is and never will be a way to solve our outstanding problems. Never. Not with Venezuela, not with Cuba. I remember in the 33 years ago, for first time, Cuba submitted to the General Assembly of the United Nations a resolution condemning the U.S. blockade towards Cuba. And India and the international community as a whole has supported this resolution during all these 33 years. So this policy is isolated. Nobody supports the policy of the blockade towards Cuba. And this kind of message is very important. Of course, sometimes the United States don't follow up the opinion of the international community, but we should remember every day that we are against the use of force, the so-called concept that peace through the force. Nobody will accept this. Peace is only a possibility to achieve the peace through the negotiation, through the diplomacy, through the dialogue, not through the force. Never. Any people in the world will accept this concept again.